Hello, everyone, and welcome to another version of How to Write Stuff Better. I'm your host, JoAnn Fastoff, and today we're going to talk about editing. And if you ask why you need an editor, you need an editor. Hey, you got something stronger than coffee right now? Might be hard to digest. Okay, so why do we need an editor? Well, what are we talking about when we say editing? What we're talking about is making a book better in the different categories: proofreading, editing, critiquing, revising. The real advantage of an editor is somebody who's going to try to see inside you, the author's vision, and then on the author's term, try to figure out and identify areas that the author may not have thought of, or perhaps the author did think of it, but it's another stage in the process of trying to make their story better. Now, why is professional editing important? See, there's a tendency for people to think and want to think about being the singular artist of a creation of a book or a story. And there are a lot of people that will support that in the end. An editor is really important because it becomes part of the editor's job that the editor becomes a teammate. So in essence, they're invested in making sure your book is the best possible. So I've talked to 3 or 4 of my editor friends, and this is what I've gleaned from them. What are the major mistakes writers make? See, it depends on the writer. Most editors get work from younger writers, and not necessarily young in age, but writers who don't have that much experience. And these could be writers that are working on their first full-length book. But one mistake is false starts, which means that when an editor starts to read the manuscript, nothing in those first sequences is doing much for the editor or as the reader. And editors say that this is what they go through the first time, and they just try to read it for their own edification and enjoyment. And often there will be a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, a page, or 10 pages, which include a lot of backstory that wander here and there. I've been guilty, trust me. And then finally, the editors say they'll reach a moment in the manuscript where they say, okay, this is where it starts. False starts. This is where the actions to characters and so forth start to really interest the reader, and specifically the editor. And then the editor says, for that reason, that big mistake is that, again, this comes back to where they now need the work. And nearly all writers now work on a computer. Very few work on a typewriter where they can just go back and forth and clean up their mistakes. It's not happening now. There's so many grammar apps out there that helps an editor, but it still doesn't help with the context of the story, okay? A big question for writers is, how does an editor price their work? Well, the 4 editors I know say that most of the people that they work with come to them because somebody referred them. And they'll look at the manuscript, and generally they can either give them, a per page price. And some of my friends, editors, they take payment plans, okay? Their work is very important. So negotiation is obviously probable, but, don't knock them out on the basis of how much they work, okay? It's very important. They could wind up doing a whole project, or they could do articles. But, try not to price them out, okay? And sometimes, see, the editor has to read the manuscript 3 or 4 times, okay? And if it's possible, they really love meeting the writer, because then there's a lot of times, the editor might critique it and edit it and then meet with the author and then find out really what the author was trying to say. And then that makes everything just even better. Some of my questions always to an editor is, how do you keep my voice intact? How do you do this? So as an editor, the author is the one that makes all the changes. The author can see exactly what the editor did and can say, yeah, I like that. No, I don't like it. And then they have their comments. And that way, the editor can say, hey, I can accept that, or, I think this is how we should do this. And then make sure that the author's voice emerges. And if the editor can't help with the author's voice, it means the author didn't make a real effort making their voice heard. But some of the editors I know say that if they have issues with the voice, that's a conversation that they're going to have with the author and then try to articulate why the voice is a problem. So another question you might want to ask an editor is, why does book editing take so much time? Magazine articles, that could be 1,000 words, 2,000 words. But when an editor has to edit a 50,000 word, 100,000 word manuscript, then everything's connected, and sometimes in journalism, the story or the articles, well, they're connected, but there's different parts to it. Things can be removed, things can be put back, things can be chopped, and so forth. But you're still generally getting the story that you want, just in a better form. It's like, I made this terrific cake. It's a little lopsided, I see on one side. But my friend comes through, frosted the perfect way, and you don't even see the lopsided cake. The cake is still there, and the cake is what I made. Hope that was a good metaphor. See, Kurt Vonnegut said, every sentence should be doing not just one thing, but it should be doing 3 or 5 things. And that's what makes it difficult in a story. And that's what makes it difficult for editors. I hope this helped. I have a couple of questions for you. See if you can answer them. What does it mean when we say false start? Why does an editor have to read your manuscript many times? And besides false starts, what's another mistake writers make? Hey, remember, you can always go download my booklet, How to Write Stuff Better. It's free, and therefore you get the booklet, you know what's happening next week. Okay, so what's happening next week? Traditional publishing versus self-publishing, and we'll start with traditional publishing. I hope you have a good week. Until then, bye.